Hi, I'm Jacques, and welcome to the Real American Podcast. As much a review of the original G.I. Joe TV series as it is a review of the accuracy of my childhood memories. We're going to start with Cobra Strikes, the first episode of a 5-part miniseries that started the 1983 television powerhouse that is G.I. Joe. The first episode, Cobra Strikes, opens with the title sequence containing awesome music and a great montage of the Joes laying waste to the forces of Cobra. As a child, I remember all of the action sequences were super plausible. Everything made perfect sense to me. It seemed like it was based in the real world. As an adult, they come off as way more goofy and far-fetched. There's all kinds of things that happen that you just kind of have to suspend your disbelief, and I'm totally just going to accept that that's a thing for most of it.
G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra and Destro, fighting to save the day.
Also, I noticed that the song makes mention of the fact that the G.I. Joes are fighting the forces of Cobra and Destro. As far as my childhood memories are concerned, I remember Cobra Commander being the supreme leader of Cobra. He was in charge of everyone worked down from him, and the way it came off in the first episode, and also what the song implies, is that Destro has a level of autonomy that I don't remember. He's more of like an independent contractor or almost an equal to Cobra Commander, and that doesn't line up with my childhood memories at all. Also, the song refers to Cobra as a terrorist organization. When I think of terrorist, I think of Al-Qaeda or the Irish Republican Army or any smaller force that's working against a larger government, attempting to take it down through limited interactions, not attempting to have large-scale battles. Cobra's army seems to have the same might as any superpower of the time. Russia, United States, England, China. It's a superpower. It's its own nation in a way. Calling it a terrorist organization doesn't cover the scope of Cobra's activities. In the first scene of the first episode, Stalker, one of the G.I. Joes, who I don't remember, makes mention of how cool the new Sky Stalker jets are. These are a product placement right from the get-go. This show was all about selling toys. I remember trying to get them all when they first came out, and it was impossible. They would always make sure that they released more stuff so you could never have it all. It was a sickness, and I definitely had it. Next, Duke, Stalker, and Snake Eyes, who looks nothing like I remember him. I can only assume that there's some type of costume change that happens after the first season. At this point, he looks like Arctic PJ Adventure Man. He does not look well. He has no sword. He has no wolf. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but it was not even that clear that it was Snake Eyes. They didn't mention his name until the very end of the episode, so I was kind of clueless as to who this third G.I. Joe was. Anyways, all three of them are hanging out on the runway, and a jet nearly takes their heads off, about a foot away from decapitating all three of them. Duke is furious, and he makes mention to the fact that he's going to kick the mustard out of that crazy hot dog. The hot dog in question is Scarlet. He goes over to the jet and he's about to give her what for, and immediately changes his tune when he realizes that apparently this is the woman that he may have some sort of sexual tension with through the entire show. I have no memory of that as a kid, but it was pretty present in the two opening scenes that there's some sort of chemistry between these two.
I'm gonna kick the mustard out of that crazy hot dog.
To break up the sexual tension, a Cobra Strike team led by Major Blood shows up to smash the Joe's snazzy new jets. They succeed in taking out about 4 of them. Their attempt to pin down the remaining jets is disastrous. Instead of using strafing fire, Cobra just crashes 2 of their jets into the runway on either side of a launching jet. My memories of the battles of G.I. Joe, nobody ever dies. You never see any death. Everybody always ejects out and a parachute lands. But I will say that these 2 pilots are definitely dead. There was no way they survived that crash. So Opening scene of G.I. Joe, total death count, 2. Next, we jump to an exterior shot of Cobra's fortress, and it is ridiculous. It's in the middle of the desert, it's huge, it's covered with gigantic carved snakes. It is anything but inconspicuous, which leads me to believe that Cobra's base is so fortified and dangerous that it would be too costly for any military unit to make an assault on it. That can be the only way that this even works plot-wise. Either that or they really are their own nation and there's some sort of reason why declaring war on them would... It's pretty thin. Destro arrives at the fortress, leading a team of Sherpas carrying his gear, who he proceeds to scare off with some fake hocus-pocus. This is the first mention of the frugal nature of Cobra. Destro is really happy that he doesn't have to pay the Sherpas for carrying his stuff. The fact that Cobra is cheap comes up over and over again. That is something I remember from the entire series. Cobra Commander wastes money, but at the same time is frugal at very odd intervals. Next, Cobra Commander complains about how Destro's late, and Destro rightfully brings up the fact that the ridiculously melodramatic location he has to come to is difficult. It's a stupid location for a base. Destro brings Cobra Commander 3 elements that will power the mass device. That's M period, A period, S period, S period. What it stands for, I have no idea at this point. The 3 radioactive elements resemble red crystals, blue water, and gold dust. They'll power the device, which is kind of like a giant teleporter laser cannon. It can take matter and send it anywhere as long as there's a small quarter-size microchip in the location you want to send it to. So it's a lot like the transporter from Star Trek, only a lot worse. Cobra Commander makes mention of that these are the first steps toward universal domination, implying that they're going to utilize the laser to travel to other planets and take over yet-to-be-discovered alien civilizations. This seems pretty far-fetched because you need to have a little chip wherever you're going to go, so I think these are just some big dreams, and maybe that's what Cobra's known for over the course of the entire series. We then check in on the G.I. Joes who are hanging out at a building that's just labeled U.S. Military, no admittance. No name of a base or any distinction, it's just the entire military in one building. General Flagg, who I remember in name but not in image. I always remembered that the general running the G.I. Joes was General Hawk. So General Flagg maybe is just a regular army general that I have very little memory of. Is hanging out with Duke and also Major Juanita Hooper, who actually is the Baroness in disguise. She's from Budget and Accounting, and she's there to make sure that the new space satellite is coming in under budget.
I presume your request for G.I. Joe was filed correctly, General Flagg. Form BX-257, requisition order MZ-19 in triplicate.
Duke, this is Major Juanita Hooper from the Office of Budget and Accounting at the Pentagon.
And the best way to test the defenses is by having the G.I. Joes attempt to steal it. This seems like a poor plan. There's less than 24 hours to go. Probably you should just stake the Joes out and have them wait for Cobra, who's going to show up to get the satellite, which is massive. It is thousands of pounds and would be very hard to steal. And although the Cobras have the mass device, the Joes aren't really aware of that yet, and it seems like just conventional defenses would be just fine. But instead, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and Stalker all assault the building, destroy the front gate, destroy a lot of the defenses, blow up some vehicles, and sneak into where the satellite is being housed. All congratulating themselves on a great job of essentially wiping away a large percentage of the defenses that were going to keep the satellite safe in the first place. But apparently this isn't a problem because the general deems that even though a small commando force made it into the base, there's no way that they could steal the satellite, and therefore it's safe. Scooby-Dooby, yabba-dabba, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. One thing to consider is that the G.I. Joes were waiting in the woods the entire time. The second the general asked them to make an assault, they were ready to go. I can only assume that they were there just as backup for Duke in case anything went wrong. I know the show needs to move quickly because it's only 23 minutes long, but that seemed like an unnecessary scene for sure. The Baroness then convinces the general to show the G.I. Joes the new Relay Star, the fancy satellite they were attempting to steal in the first place. It's mentioned that once it's in orbit, there will be no place to hide, and it can receive and send the most powerful energy. I don't know what that means exactly, whether it's not a communications satellite, apparently it's just for transferring energy. I don't know how that would have a bearing on hiding or not. Maybe it's got a camera relay and a power transfer. It doesn't make much sense. While the tour is going on, the Baroness sneaks one of the coin-sized transmitters onto the mass device. Cobra tries to transport it back to its base, but it fails immediately due to some sort of temperature controls. Cobra Commander immediately complains about money, saying that Destro's costing Cobra millions of stolen dollars. Once again, Cobra is very focused on losing and keeping money for whatever reason. Following that, Destro says, well, it's fine. Let's just send in a whole bunch of troops and some tanks right into that room and we'll take it by force. So they transfer a strike team there. The strike team gets overtaken by the Joes and they don't succeed in taking the satellite. This is over a course of like maybe 2 minutes. During those 2 minutes, Destro figures out how his own transport device works and sends it to capture their strike team and also the mass device. And Duke gets swooped up in the transport beam and is brought to Cobra headquarters. He is knocked out with a karate chop after fighting, 15 or so Cobra troopers. About 10 seconds after Duke has been subdued, Cobra launches the satellite, which is now completely under their control, even though they've had it for almost zero time and no launch prep time. Like, this is the best satellite ever. Doesn't need a launch pad, doesn't need anything. It's just ready to go. It's like out the box, satellite in outer space, which works out pretty good, right? So now Cobra's on the way to using the mass device to start to wreak havoc globally. Flash to an exterior shot of the Eiffel Tower where one of the transport ships is being placed. Cobra's obviously planning on stealing the national landmark to demoralize the people of France. Meanwhile, the G.I. Joes are attempting to figure out how to find Duke, and their best bet is Dr. Laszlo Vandermeer, who is located in New England. Now, I noticed that they don't bring up a lot of locations in G.I. Joe of their own fortresses. Like, I don't really know what country Cobra is located in. I don't know what state G.I. Joe headquarters is located in. But they do mention other places, and for some geography effect, they get to these places incredibly quickly. And I know it's a cartoon that's only 23 minutes, and I'll say it again, but it's a little weird how far and how fast people can travel.
Citizens of the world, we have a power greater than any in the history of mankind. Look and tremble. This is but the first in a series of demonstrations of the awesome power of Cobra. Beg your leaders to surrender to Cobra at once. You have 24 hours. Cobra!
Cobra hijacks all TV and radio stations to deliver a message. A series of demonstrations of the awesome power of Cobra. They steal the Eiffel Tower and give Earth 24 hours to surrender. Little weird. I don't know if France losing the Eiffel Tower would be enough for me to completely give up control of my country as a citizen. Like, even if somebody stole the Statue of Liberty, I don't think that would really have that much of an effect. We'd probably be angry about it. Maybe we'd be concerned they were going to steal something of more importance. But just taking the statue, I don't think it would do it. We then flash to Duke waking up in the slave pens. He's surrounded by slaves that have mind control headbands attached to them, so they don't have any free will and they're just the workforce of Cobra, which kind of leads into what I was thinking earlier. Why would anybody work for Cobra? But this is the perfect solution. The fact that they can mind control people basically means that all of the shit jobs in Cobra are handled by slave labor. And who knows, maybe even the soldiers. Maybe the entire force is mostly mind-controlled except for the upper echelon. So that actually makes a lot of sense as far as how the series unfolds. Certainly the amount of defeats that Cobra suffers at the hands of G.I. Joe would be demoralizing to their troops, except they're all mind-controlled. Also, that might explain why those two pilots kamikazed themselves earlier. They just blindly followed orders and strafed the field with their own jets. The Baroness, wearing the completely wrong color scheme, some sort of blue number that is a lot like a Cobra Trooper's outfit, only with a couple extra parts on the arms and waist, informs Duke that he will be fitted with a slave collar and forced to compete in the arena of sport. The Joes are helicoptering their way toward Vandermeer's estate, where they find him drawing a nice painting on his yard, although actually he's a Cobra agent in disguise, and there's a lot of Cobra troopers hiding in the woods, and the real Vandermeer is tied to a tree. The Joes engage Cobra and defeat them and decide to not shoot at them once they're in retreat, which seems like a poor move. They should probably get over that and start killing Cobra agents to make their life easier later. Here's where the story gets a little bit weird. So Vandermeer claims that Cobra picked his brain about the mass device they built, and that's how they got the information to build it. So they captured him, interrogated him, kept him at his own house, under guard, I guess, and then sent a strike force there when they discovered that the Joes would be heading in to pick him up. It doesn't actually make that much sense. It's a little bit of a plot hole, but we're going to steamroll right through it. The Doctor mentions that the only way to defeat a mass device is with another mass device, so they have to construct one of their own and also acquire the 3 rare elements, the red crystal and blue water and gold flakes, to make their device work. We then flash to the slave pens, where Duke has been fitted with a mind control headband, and Destro is in control of him. He's going to be forced to battle Cobra Commander's champion, who is an 11-foot tall, monstrous human being that resembles Conan. It leads me to wonder whether he's an experiment of some sort, or if he's just a villager from nearby that just happens to be in amazing shape. I'm not sure where Cobra gets these people. He does not resemble any of the other slaves for sure. The episode ends with Duke looking pretty demoralized to the fact that he's going to have to fight this person, and there's a nice recap of what we're going to see next time on G.I. Joe.
In our next episode of G.I. Joe, Duke finds an unexpected ally in the shadows of the arena of sport, while Snake Eyes, Scarlet, and Stalker join with Snowjob in a treacherous search for the radioactive crystals of death. Cobra terrifies the world with the impossible capture of an entire army, and Duke's desperate bid for freedom seems sure to end in disaster. All in Slave of the Cobra Master, the next exciting episode of G.I. Joe, a real American hero.
One thing that is way different than I remember is there is no knowing is half the battle segment at the end of the episode. I thought that was at the end of every episode of G.I. Joe, but apparently those get brought in later. Who knows? As far as my final thoughts on the episode, I enjoyed watching it. It is a lot goofier than I remember, and the animation does not look nearly as smooth as I thought it would be. Hopefully you're enjoying this review and little journey down my youth, and I bet a lot of yours. If you like the show, please give us a good review, and see you guys next time. Yo, Joe.